This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Melissa Sturgis, the CEO of Ananda Development, is here today following news on the issuance of convertible loan notes. Now you've raised $350,000 and have further commitments for $200,000 by way of these convertible loan notes, Melissa. And a decent chunk of the CLNs have been taken by directors as well. So first of all, what are the funds going to be used for?
Thanks, Mark. Yep, that's right. It's small raising, really, but at a nice premium to the current share price. And I think that shows, the commitment of myself as CEO and of our chairman and a number of our fairly large shareholders have also supported this initiative. So that's encouraging to see their support of what we're trying to do. The funds are going to be used directly on our research growing project, which I think everyone knows we've received a license from the Home Office to commence our research project, and that is involving stabilising 65 strains of cannabis and conducting field trials. In terms of the absolute use of those funds, a couple of things. One is a slightly larger footprint for the field trials than we had initially anticipated. So that's a really crucial part of getting a company like us ready for commercial growing, is to make sure that the strains that we ultimately choose function well and grow well in a field environment. So some of the funds will be used for that. The other funds to start to kit out the lab. So obviously we're doing test work on strains. The material is the cannabis plant material that we grow in this initial stage will be sent to Israel for very particular analysis, but we need some equipment in our lab in the UK. And thirdly, we're now starting to assemble a really highly skilled team to execute this plan. I think shareholders and people interested in the sector are starting to understand more and more that growing cannabis is a science. It's not so much an art. It really is a science, and we've been really fortunate to attract the ex-head grower from Bol Pharma in Israel. He ran a team, six teams of 40 people in Israel, growing medicinal cannabis for their market and for international markets. So it's attracting people like him.
Okay, so you said there it's to help fund a larger than originally contemplated footprint. Why the increase in size then?
Yeah, well, it is about making sure we've got plenty of space to make sure that these plants that we choose, which ultimately we want to grow for commercial purposes, have an opportunity to thrive in like a mimicked environment for the one that they will be growing in commercially. So it's about giving them the space and giving our researchers the space to actually conduct those field trials to maximise the success of us transitioning from the R&D phase through to the commercial phase.
Okay, so clearly a good thing.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's really encouraging. There's a lot to do, but we're very focused.
Okay. Now, can you just remind us about the setup of DJT in the Ananda roadmap? And is there any potential as well for Ananda to increase their percentage of DJT to 100?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we hope to put a prospectus in front of shareholders shortly. Actually, it's probably not a full prospectus, it's a notice of meeting. So we will be putting this resolution in front of our shareholders to bring the other 50% of DJT plants that we don't own, that is in the ownership of the farmers, into the fold. The key driver of that is really straightforward. It is ultimately our ambition is to be a commercial grower of medicinal cannabis, and capturing 100% of those revenues in Ananda at this point in time makes a huge amount of sense to me as a major shareholder anyway. And the other thing that it does is it means that the growing team, so Stuart Pickover and Simon Goddard and their team who've done this before when they worked with GW Pharmaceuticals, it means they become completely aligned with the Ananda shareholders. So I think it's a pretty compelling argument to make this move.
Okay. And what about the setup at DJT in terms of the infrastructure they've already got in place?
Yeah, look, that was one of the driving things for this deal that we did with DJT, because they are very experienced and very successful growers of technical salad leaves, and because they had this experience with GW Pharmaceuticals. We just basically plug into their back end in terms of standard operating procedures and all of the SOPs and all the back office type workflows and all of those sorts of things that you need when you're growing medicinal cannabis. They're already doing all of this in their technical salad leaf growing. I'm sure you can imagine, if you're growing a salad leaf and it's never going to be cooked, the standards to which you operate have to be so high. And these guys are used to having sort of 2 or 3 days notice for a full audit of their process flows and passing them with flying colors, I might add, every time. So for us to be able to bolt into that without having to start that from the ground up and take all the risks that ordinarily you'd take by trying to work out these things from first principles, again, makes a huge amount of sense. We take their skills, bolt them together with our skills, and I think that moves us forward quickly and the intention is successfully.
Okay, good. Now, I picked up on a quote from the RNS about Ananda having the opportunity to become a significant participant in the medical cannabis sector by supplying UK-grown carbon-neutral, consistent and high-quality flour and oils to the UK and international markets. So, carbon-neutral, can you explain why that is an important point?
Yeah, I think it's important now, and I think it's going to become increasingly important. If we, most people who invest in the small sector have been following Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and I think we're all starting to be aware of the carbon footprint and the carbon emissions from mining Bitcoin. And it's actually no different in the cannabis space. That the grows that are done in very controlled conditions with lots of light and lots of heat have a massive carbon footprint. We've just seen an article recently in Nature magazine, which is one of the preeminent scientific journals globally, very, very, very well respected, starting to document the carbon footprint and the carbon emissions from these large grows. Now, our farmers, our partners at DJT, when they did their work with GW Pharmaceuticals, they very successfully ran a natural season grow with no artificial light and no artificial heat. It's probably one of the big things that I'm going to myth bust as we build this business out, is you don't have to grow under artificial light and artificial heat. In the UK, we have actually a perfect climate for growing. If you think about it, we grow lots of vegetables in this country very, very successfully. You don't need heat, you need lots of light, and you need the right temperature. And we can achieve that. And our ambition is to be carbon neutral. The other advantage of doing that is, whilst we're in this growing sector, access to capital, as we all know, is one of the things we need to be really focused on. Until the big institutional players come into this space, we're always going to be very focused on how we build our business. Firstly, we build it because we're all committed with our own capital. As you've said earlier, the board is very committed. We have a very committed group of major shareholders. But secondly, there is the opportunity for us to access green funding, which is, sits sort of outside the normal funding routes, but could be applied to this industry really well. So we've also got our mind on that as a funding opportunity going forward, if we can achieve this carbon neutral business.
Okay, good. Now, I remember last time that we spoke, you said you were looking at stabilising cannabis strains, particularly strains that can be used in helping treat pain. Have you made any progress over the last month in this?
Yeah, so we've gone through the initial process. We've chosen now 13 strains of cannabis that we are going to stabilise. So what we did to achieve that was we looked at the research, we looked at the literature, and we looked at what strains are being grown around the world. We then pushed all of that information into our head grower, geneticist, Dr. Hadar Less, and he then went through the process of assessing the various strains that are being used currently and identifying a number of strains that we think would be useful. In the early stages of this, we really focused on getting a cross-section of high THC, low CBD strains, high CBD, low THC strains, and balanced strains, CBD and THC being sort of balanced. And also, we're very focused on terpenes. It's one of the issues that's starting to come up a lot in the UK space is that terpenes are very, very useful and very much part of the efficacious benefit of medical cannabis. Certainly, it's something that's probably more developed in North American markets, but something that is part of our strain choosing. We're very focused on making sure that we end up with strains of cannabis that also have terpene profiles. So they're the other molecules in the cannabis plant that have medicinal benefits. We're very focused on making sure we have the right terpenes in our ultimate strains that we grow commercially.
Okay. Now, just to finish off then, Melissa, what are your thoughts on the UK government's attitude towards the medical cannabis sector? Are the attitudes and practices and the red tape improving at all towards the sector, do you think?
Yeah, I think yes, generally. I think there's a frustration with many people that it doesn't move quickly enough. But I take comfort in that. In my mining years, I worked all over the African continent, and I really appreciate strong rule of law, strong regulatory framework, and a consistent regulatory framework. One of the really good things about operating in this country is when the regulations become clearer or are made or enforced, or not enforced, they're realised. We know that we're going to be working with those for the foreseeable future. We don't really run the risk in this country that we're going to see a regulatory environment that chops and changes. So we're really comfortable with what's happening. And it was part of our thesis at the beginning was that it would take us a while to get through the processes, and for good reason. The Home Office wants to know that we are, the right people to hold a license. The MHRA needs to be comfortable with what we're trying to achieve. We knew that would take a while, and that the regulatory environment would be opening up and maturing as that was happening. So we see ourselves very much working in parallel with the opening up of the medical cannabis sector here, so that as it opens up, we're ready to move. There won't be a lag from our perspective. So we were happy to sort of take that bit of pain for, it was nearly 2 years whilst we worked on our application and had all of our meetings and liaison with the regulatory bodies. So I think I'm bullish. And when you compare with other jurisdictions, there's always a lag. So you see legalization in the medicinal space, and then you see a lag because the industry has to be created. Doctors have to be trained. Doctors have to be taught about the endocannabinoid system. They have to understand dosage. They have to get their insurances in place. So you can't just say, well, the regulations are there and click your fingers and suddenly there's an industry. Then all of this stuff takes time. And I think it's rolling out nicely. I'm really encouraged and obviously bullish.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it certainly sounds like Ananda taking that pain early, will pay off, and you're in the right place at the right time, ready to go. So I look forward to following up with you as and when the updates come out. But Melissa Sturgis, for now, the CEO of Ananda Developments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for listening to this Stockbox interview. For more information, interviews and videos, visit our website at stockboxmedia.com or give us a follow on Twitter by searching @StockboxMedia.